Hot Water History, Thursday night, episode 199. Richard, what's going on?
The dawn of 200, and with it comes yet several realizations that not only are we have we been right about everything, but we're even early on a lot of stuff. And it was about 18 months ago where you had your solo episode on this very podcast channel talking about chemtrails. You did a great analysis of it then. It was such a conspiracy theory to think that governments and non-governmental agencies and organizations and major funding and financial firms were orchestrating cloud seeding and geoengineering. And yet here we are, and the evil ones at Davos gather together and they can't help but let the odious cat out of the bag, right?
I can't believe you remember that was 18 months ago. I didn't even remember I mean, now I do.
I'm estimating. I don't know. It was
The
about then.
government is manipulating the weather.
Yes, and has been for decades, but it's never been such a obvious revelation of the method that they're engaged in. And as with all things, when we're talking about this level of human depravity, sin, and general disregard for fellow man and people throughout the world, when you're affecting their environment at a massive scale, we're not just talking about some sort of political arrangement or operation or some economic point of human action or succession of human actions, if you will, a system. But we're really speaking about some spiritual darkness that is both present and now very much activated in a group of people who are so narcissistic, so hedonistic, and so indifferent to the plight of others that all of these things from the mass formation psychosis around the WWE wrestling bout that is American politics, all the way through to genocide going on in Gaza, a NATO inspired and activated war in Ukraine and Russia, and now it's obvious to anyone who's got a functioning brainstem, and that is that this program of cloud seeding is really, and all you have to do is look up and see the lines and see the active poisoning of the stratosphere, of the atmosphere,
That's the
and
scariest part, by the way.
just
This
the
isn't this
just
doesn't take
how out in the open it
specialized
is.
it doesn't take specialized knowledge or I did my
Correct.
research. I
Yes,
looked into this, I went down this YouTube rabbit hole. You seriously only have to look up
correct. Yes,
nearing a major city.
yes. In this issue, this is what constitutes digging deeply, right? Just and for those of you listening on audio, I just looked up to the ceiling. That's what it requires. That's it. Just a strain of the neck to see the lines in the sky. These are not contrails. This is chemical, systematic, planned spraying so as to induce some weather or climatic outcomes. And this is not a secret. All you have to do is move your head from the sky and then tap on a few keys and listen to people who are in the know and knowledgeable of and have studied this and tried to mitigate and draw attention to this and frustrate such efforts and see how authentic their reports are. And now we have straight confirmation from James O'Keefe infiltrating Davos and members of the cabal, or more so attendees at the cabal that is the World Economic Forum. I think the World Economic Forum, why don't they just come out with their mascot? You know, the Olympics has just came out with the series of mascots for each country. It's got to be some nefarious Bohemian Grove owl, right? Just for the Economic Forum. One of the owl's eyes is the O in forum, something like that.
Yeah.
Just do it that way. We know you're Satanists. We know you're transhumanists. So just come out and have Moloch just make his special presentation. And now featuring after Klaus Schwab, Moloch, right?
Have they done anything weird for the Olympics yet? Remember the
Well,
summer
that's
one?
coming. Remember the summer one with
Yeah.
the blasphemous Last Supper with the fat, ugly women, all taking place in Paris, which was the capital of the eldest daughter of the church. Talk about inversion.
You think they're gonna run that back?
I don't know if they're going to do the Last Supper. That's just if they're one thing, it's that they're not terribly unoriginal. I suppose that was a double negative in a sense, but they'll do something blasphemous. There'll be some upside down cross or something like that, some mocking of the Lord or the Holy Spirit or the saints or our Blessed Mother. That's what'll happen. And then all milquetoast Catholics go, "Oh, I'm so offended," and not recognize the darkness that's enveloping the world.
What do you think has to happen for chemtrails to get more popular as a realization?
I, I I go so far as to say we're at the beginning stage. We're at stage one of recognition. I hate that word awareness because it's so overused, but it's a recognition and then connection to how the respiratory symptoms that either you or your family are experiencing, or more so when, and if you're open-minded at that notion to see that this is different from my childhood when we had, as you pointed out in the previous podcast 18 or so months ago, that we didn't have clouds that were just sheets, and we didn't have these uh certainly we had odd weather events, but they were never of just simply one variety of radical cooling that extends for a long time. Nor did we experience, I can speak from my own childhood, every kid I knew who suffered from allergies or asthma, they got better over time. They didn't, as they grew into adolescence and adulthood, regress back to the symptoms that they experienced through their asthma and allergy as a child. They didn't go back to 2-year-old asthmatic or 4-year-old huffing on the inhaler all the time. They they grew out of that. Their conditions improved almost through a natural evolution, especially if they became athletes and were really extending and testing their respiratory and circulatory systems. And now I see on just regular social media, Rothmas, someone who follows us and of whom we're big fan, Rothmas, great follow on X at Rothmas. And is that his handle? I think it's
Rothmus?
just at Rothmas. So he just posts images and memes of a anarcho-libertarian bend, and they often are tongue in cheek. But he had this one I'll never forget pertaining to the outcomes of all of this cloud seeding and geoengineering, climate engineering. That's what we ought to be worried about, not climate change. It's climate engineering. But he had this there were two, it was a picture of two obvious railroad tunnels. So there were railroad tracks going into two tunnels into a mountain, right? And one entrance to the tunnel was open, and the other one was totally bricked over for whatever reason. Maybe they just didn't. There was a um, something geological happened in that one tunnel that made it not safe, so they just sealed it off with brick. And he wrote, "How I wake up in the morning." In other words, I've never had this where you wake up and you're congested in one nostril, and other people are reporting these things. And I give credit to a lot of the dedicated sleuths on this issue, like Bethany O'Leary, who we're going to take a look at, reporting upon what James O'Keefe found out and just uncovered in Davos, and the audacity, the temerity that these people have to brag about their geoengineering. And then maybe after we take a look at this clip, Charlie, if it's okay with you, we can talk about what we think are the spiritual underpinnings and drives that are moving this about or bringing it about.
Split.
James O'Keefe just went undercover at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And what he got on hidden camera is absolutely explosive and unbelievable. These elites are openly admitting to spraying sulfur dioxide and other harmful toxic aerosols into the atmosphere to alter the climate. Sulfur dioxide, which is the same chemical that's released during a volcanic eruption, it also blocks out the sun and cools the planet. But let's take a look at what else it does to people. It doesn't just stop at irritating your lungs. It also causes itchy, watery eyes, chest tightness, worsens asthma, irritates your nose, causes sinus pressure, headaches, constant sneezing, all the things that people report suddenly having their allergies acting up and going crazy. And they're not just openly admitting it, they're laughing about it. This is real, it's on video, and it needs to go mega viral. Don't want people focusing on. These particles don't just disappear. Once they're sprayed, they stay, they linger in the atmosphere for months, up to a year, actively altering weather patterns the entire time. That's what I said, actively altering weather patterns the entire time. This isn't a one-day experiment. This is a long-term atmospheric manipulation. But notice what they don't call it. They don't call it climate engineering, they don't call it geoengineering, and they certainly don't call it chemtrails, because they said those terms scare people. But they call it aerosol injections. Same chemicals, same spraying, new name, just to keep the public calm. That's textbook gaslighting. Watch this clip.
We invest in these technologies to assist with the warming climate, and the effect of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere will help block some of the warming, and the particles stay in the air for 1 year. So, and actually we're speaking to some of the airplane manufacturers and to see if they can emit some of our technology into the atmosphere to help with the global warming. That's right. Yeah, climate. I mean, we don't like to use the term climate engineering. It scares people, so we prefer.
But it's but for me, being an engineer, I think that's actually what you do. It's
yes.
You can have financial engineering, you can have, I'm sure, climate engineering, because it involves something that's more scientific.
Yes, exactly. You're an engineer, you understand. And from Sweden, right? Yeah. So we don't like to call them chemtrails. We don't like to use this.
So what do you call it instead?
Well, we call it aerosol injection.
Did you hear that? They admit the spraying is happening. Sulfur dioxide. But they say the problem is the name, that it scares people. Not the chemical, not the lack of consent from the American people, and not the consequences. The name. And it gets darker. Kennedy Ricci, who is the president and CEO of 4Air, openly admits, unaware that he's being recorded, that much of geoengineering work came directly out of the military. He laughs and says the military does this all the time behind closed doors. Cloud seeding, the military. Watch this clip.
A lot of the work actually came out of the military, so they do this all the time.
Whoa! Have you worked with them at all?
No, because they're a little more closed door about their procedures.
You ever heard of sulfur dioxide?
Yeah.
You've heard of that? Okay.
Yeah. It's actually pretty cheap to do it. The ability to put sulfur dioxide there is actually a pretty cheap way to cool down the earth.
Oh, yeah.
So, opportunity for, one or two people to do it is, impressive. He went a little further. He's like, it'd be interesting if the government start doing this over each other's territories on purpose. Like, if we start getting weather modification as a, government, either good or bad. The closest one I'm aware of is someone called the Airborne Snow Observatory. They do some more like weather, I don't want to say modification, but more like upper atmosphere weather monitoring is probably a better term.
He's literally laughing about how governments can flood, drought, or storm other countries and finds it interesting.
I appreciate her passion. I really do. And the righteous indignation and real enmity, righteous enmity that you have for people who are acting in such a malevolent way and a malfeasant way. And then you get I still encounter them in my DMs, or less my DMs, but more my replies on Twitter or X. And people will say, well, why would they do this? Because it's going to affect them too. Who obviously not. It's not going to, at least in the mind of those who are in the power cabal and the elite class, there's something that they know that is ultimately detrimental to the rest of us eaters and those who can be cast aside, and yet they can not suffer the consequences of it, or they're willing to suffer the consequences of it, maybe because they think they're from it. I don't know what the cause is, but if you're asking that question, and that question is why would they do this if it's going to affect them too, then you're just not thinking critically. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you could say the same thing about why would the elites create conditions for a 6 decade long Cold War? Well, or 7 decade long Cold War. Well, because it could lead to the end of the world and nuclear annihilation. They don't care about that, or they have such an inordinate narcissism. I know that's a hard thing to consider, inordinate narcissism, but they believe themselves to be above the fray. That some entity, most likely the father, their father, which is Satan, is going to bring them out of this. They've made a deal with the devil, and the devil's very much active, as well as his legions, in fostering and fomenting these problems for the rest of God's people and humanity. And might I go further and say that of note, when you are either in this Faustian bargain in an open fashion, as many of the people at Davos are. I mean, does anyone consider Klaus Schwab a theist? I don't think so. But let's go beyond that. They embrace such a radical Epicurean, but ultimately nihilistic egotism that there's no space, even if they were to allow for the existence of a divine creator, they've eliminated one, divine justice from reigning. That's just not in the purview. Obviously, it's convenient to argue that there's no divine justice coming because they're doing such unnatural and satanic things. But beyond that, so the idea of everybody getting their due is not on their radar. And why wouldn't they? Why would they believe people get their due? They form spy rings and they engage in regime uh, toppling and coups all over the world. They engage in warfare. They engage in all of this just catastrophic stuff. So and it doesn't seem to affect them. Doesn't seem to hurt them. It doesn't. 300,000 Ukrainian boys dead in the snow in the frozen fields of northeastern Ukraine or in southeastern Ukraine doesn't affect them at all. It
No.
doesn't affect the Ukrainians, their countrymen, who are off in Cyprus having a party, or as Tucker Carlson related when he was in Switzerland, there's Ukrainians running around and they're all driving Aston Martins. So it doesn't affect them. And their insulation from that, I think, only emboldens their insulation from divine justice, or it's the delay upon its coming, only emboldens them further. This is a result, if I could go further, about not just the denial of the divine, but this is why angelology is so important. Because if you have a sense of understanding that there are beings that are near infinitely greater in terms of their omniscience, their prescience, their just natural and supernatural powers, intellectual powers than us, and they are ontological or essential mediators between us and God, the divine creator. Well, if you eliminate them, then there's this natural inclination for people in general, given our concupiscence, to elevate ourselves to the status of angels. And that is radically unnatural. It goes back to, I don't know if it's my favorite quote, but it's got to be in the top five. Blaise Pascal saying, "He who acts the angel always acts the beast." So this is why to have abandoned the essential chain of being and to have eliminated not just God from that, but if you were to allow for a creative force, if we're going to get all new agey, right, and Gnostic, well, then even if you allow for that, you're going to eliminate angels and propagate yourselves, thus justifying this distinction between yourselves as this Ubermenschen Nietzschean designation class versus the feeders. And Charlie, I can say this with utter confidence. You and I are feeders.
Feels like that. I think this is also why they push aliens, because aliens
To be
are
sure.
like the reverse of angels,
Yes.
because they're still what the universe is so big. There's got to be something else besides us. But deep down, everybody knows, even if we thought, even if aliens did exist, which they don't, humans would treat aliens as inferior to humans.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Okay.
angels, like you're saying, they are the mediator between humans and God.
Yes. Yes.
We we're substituting angels out of that so that,
Correct.
we act the angel.
Hmm.
And then I think with aliens, it's like, and I know this is completely off topic, but they're pushing that instead. That there's such a
Quite.
push towards that because they need it to be, they need to get rid of God completely,
Hmm.
and they need to have what else is out there, none a mix of it's a mix of we run the world, but also none of this really matters.
Right.
That's what they want to push on the
Mm.
the feeders, is that you're just on this spinning globe, you're a speck of
Right.
dust.
Right. It's the same evolution delusion.
Yes.
Yes. So if you believe in Darwinian evolution, that this is all random and happenstance, and there's just by chance that life evolves and complex intellectual life evolves, rational life even evolves. Well, then that randomness, especially with angel or with aliens, doubles down because as a result, it seems like there's no order. It's just constant flux. There's no sense. There's no logos. Remember that the conception that the Greeks had for the divine created order, creating sense of the world and applying that order and let's call it rationale to existence, they called logos. Yes. So when John in chapter 1 says that Jesus is the logos, he is, it's from him that all of nature, all of existence, not just has its being, but has its final end. Without him, there is radical true chaos. And so anything that pushes this notion of natural disorder and chaos is that which would turn or distort or deflect from an individual's and millions of people's attention to God and recognition of his order. That's why I love when I say the chaplet of St. Michael and I pray to the various choirs of angels. I ask for their guidance and intercession to understand my place within the world, and that humbly through my prayers or sufferances or alms, whatever I'm doing, my virtuous acts, I might help the archangels, for example, fight against the wickedness and snares of the devil. That we are allied with these immensely, unimaginably powerful, yet graced and sanctified and holy beings, the holy angels in the church as they are triumphant, we militant, but they come to help us in our holy militancy. Once you knock that out, that gives rise to a whole variety of manifest atrocities. And there seems to be no end. So we were talking about, well, how long are people going to put up with this? This is what Bethany O'Leary was getting to in a bit. What do we get? When is this going to, when are people going to, in a righteous way, revolt? I hope that's coming. I think we're again in the first stage of that because as I said, once it affects you, once it hits you, and it's not something you can just hit the exit screen on, but is affecting the people you love and yourself in a physical, physiological, and spiritual way. Hopefully, there's enough good people of the remnant together to really just push the envelope. And if there's not, then pray for God's intervention.
Amen.
I do. I
Yeah.
do. I hope, and for all those pilots flying those missions, I hope every plane falls out of the sky and you're in it. How can you seriously be of sound mind? You're possessed at that point. If you're a pilot spraying sulfur oxide or sulfur dioxide into the skies to contaminate it, I mean, or you're just mindlessly inane and mindlessly stupid.
Which one do you think it
To
is?
I would say that they recruit pilots that are either narcissists and believe themselves to be a part of that elite class that's not going to affect, that they're somehow bought into this, right? They're invested in it, so they're part of the cabal, so the cabal is going to protect itself or members of it. No, a 33-degree Mason will never leave another Mason behind. Yeah. So it's that kind of idea. Although I'm sure Masons are duplicitous and um are like Judas to one another too. But um yeah, they've bought into that they're part of the elite. And that's a very that has an attraction that's very alluring for people who don't belong to a family, or people who don't belong to a church, or don't belong to and feel no other human intimacy to then have it's weird. It's kind of a technocratic, satanic cult gang mentality, right? So gang members always report that this is the first time they felt a part of something. They feel love bombed in a way, as yes, they're called upon to shoot rival gang members, but still, at least they had the allegiance and the attention of, and they receive congratulatory praise when they carry out their crimes. So they have worth, they have value. I suspect that they've been brainwashed to a degree, but they also say, fuck it, I need the money, or fuck it, the world's coming to an end. It could be that type of that type of nihilism. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think they know.
I absolutely do think they know. I think they know and they don't care, or they know and they take pleasure.
Or blackmail.
Yeah, there could be some of that too. Or you're just you're swept up in the institutional buy-in, correct? I mean, it's what do we call the Stasi effect, right? When you heard that story that's relayed even well, you read The White Pill, right? By
Yeah.
Malice.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story that he tells about how uh, when the East German secret police would go and engage in espionage activities and cull information, right? They would interview different East Germans to determine and estimate the level of West German activity, whatever was going on, um, and if there were going to be crossovers through Checkpoint Charlie or something like that in East Berlin. And they were shocked to find out that East Germans would just come to them and make up shit that the East German police knew wasn't true, right? So even the communists, that this is damning evidence that could lead to other people's demise.
Yeah.
And they know that it's not, they're just fabricating it. They recognize these people just wanted to feel important, so they were informing on their neighbors
I
that weren't
remember this.
even, yeah, they just wanted to be heard. They wanted to belong, even if it was something as odious and destructive and totalitarian and anti-human as Eastern Bloc communism. So is that dynamic at play? I think there's a Stasi effect, to be sure.
Yeesh.
Mm.
Where do we go from here?
Let's go to imagining because one of the mantras of this show is that as Catholic anarcho-capitalists, we find a point of frustration, but I'm glad it's a grace that we recognize that when we present our ideology and worldview and positions, those grand ideas for which we, well, of which we defend on a regular basis and we make sense of the world, even among the most intelligent people we encounter, there's a considerable lack of imagination. They can't get past the notion of anarchy not meaning chaos, or anarchy meaning and anarcho-capitalism meaning that free markets can function without a referee, without some sort of external force to regulate them. That individuals, even if they are flawed, as Mises would say, still act in regard to attaining an Aristotelian end of happiness or contentment, satisfaction within their lives. They seek happiness, they don't seek pain and self-destruction unless they believe that self-inflicted pain and self-destruction leads them to a better end, which is happier, there's a greater contentment or satisfaction. So if we just acknowledge those, let's call them a priori axiomatic assertions, can you just go one step further and just imagine a world where the government is not intervening or imposing itself into every walk and facet of human life?
It's so unimaginable.
Yes, and I appreciate that we have such marvelous minds within the tradition of anarchism, or in the case of Mises, just general authentic classical liberalism, wherein they made things simple. As brilliant as they were, when people would say to or engage with Murray Rothbard about, well, if you're going to have an utterly laissez-faire and unencumbered market operative without the wreckage of the state and without the disease that is the state infiltrating it, well, who's going to build the roads? Yeah, are these ridiculous questions? Who's going to make sure that food makers are not poisoning us? Who's going to make sure that automobile manufacturers aren't trying to destroy us in their death traps or something like that? And he just said, go bend over and untie your shoe, look at it, tell me the characteristics of the shoe, what size it is, the material that's used, where it's made, and say, did government make your shoe? What if government did make your shoe? It'd be one horrible size fits all. And that's the problem with government intervention. It neither anticipates nor cares for, nor is there a profit loss system by which to ensure that the shoe that you're wearing is comfortable, whereas the market provides an endless variety for every want, tittle, and pleasure that you might have for your feet. I love that line. And for those just listening on audio, we're showing a tweet from stakeholder consultant. You can follow him at Echetus. That's Echetus. And he wrote, boy, do I have an economic ideology for you. And thanks, Charlie. I got this right away. And there's a chart here. It says it heads the headline of it is price changes from January 2000 to December of 2025. And you were born in 2001, so this is your lifetime, right?
Yep.
So it lists, of course, overall inflation. What's happened to the dollar since then? The dollar has lost 92% of its value since 2000. Okay.
Yep.
So the overall inflation within that period is 92.6%. So there's the straight line, right at 92.6% of our line graph, right? And on the y-axis, we have the percentage of increase or decrease in the cost of by percentage of different goods, ranging from televisions all the way to hospital services. And we have on the x-axis, just the years, so it's time on the x-axis. And just let's go through this, Charlie. What are the more expensive things, things that have outpaced overall inflation. So
Hospital
these
services,
are the goods and services that, despite the Fed's perhaps best efforts, still outpaced its money printing and
hospital
counterfeiting.
services are the biggest.
And what how hospital services have gone up since 2000, mind you. Now, healthcare wasn't cheap in 2000. It wasn't 1950 cost of healthcare. So, what hospital services have gone up by what percentage annually?
281.4%.
A measly 281.4%. Then college tuition and fees?
196.7%. College textbooks right behind 176.9%. Childcare and nursery school 158.8%. Medical care services 147%. Average hourly wages 131%. Housing 111%. And then food and beverages 105.7%.
Right. Now, there's good news here. There are goods and services, they're fewer in number, and they take up less of an American's overall income to acquire or to utilize. But you'll notice something interesting about all of this category. So go ahead in the blue, Charlie.
Yeah, so the most affordable is TVs.
Yeah, and this you don't even need complicated economic analysis or research to conclude this, right? Anyone who remembers when back in the days when Charlie was just a mere glimmer in the eye of Mrs. Westerman, that sure enough, TVs were pretty expensive. A flat screen TV back then. I mean, this is still the era. I remember being at University of Chicago in 2001. I had a box TV still
Yeah.
that I had to lug around everywhere when I moved. Yes. And so not only have TVs gone down by 98.1%, the quality of the television and thus the television viewing experience and the intake of entertainment through television has been revolutionized. It is 1,000% better. I'm estimating there about the quality. And yet the price has gone down. It's been cut essentially in half. Next.
Toys.
Hmm. Now, what hits you there? Toys have gone down by 74.2% in price. And when you, of course, add the inflationary impact, they've really gone down 150% in price when you consider the inflationary impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you consider all that, but yet childcare and nursery school has gone up 150%, almost equal, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So these are goods and services that target a specific category of Americans, parents and their children. Yes? And yet one has gone up exponentially and one has gone down by a multiple of two, right? Or one and a half. So how do you attribute that? What would you go ahead and just produce some conjecture or maybe a hypothesis as to why that would be?
Good old competition for both of those. There's so many different brands for both. There's so many different companies that are out there for both that get to freely compete versus, you know,
Yes, right.
I
I mean,
guess college tuition and fees, yeah, they compete against each other, but all of it's subsidized.
what is an industry that's more licensed and there's a greater regulatory system in place? Childcare and nursery school or the manufacturing of toys?
Childcare and nursery school is
Of course.
more regulated, yeah.
Right. Of course. I mean, think about all the aspects that have to go into creating a nursery or a school that's recognized by the state as a private entity, an institution. And you have the crowding out feature too, right? Of the state being actively running its own institutions along those lines, correct? Operating outside the profit loss system. So you have to do what? In order to compete, you have to engage in what we might call artificial price inflation. Yes,
Yeah.
in order to exist and to compete in that space. Whereas, because there is a paucity of regulation around children's toys, yeah, and the manufacturing of them, the marketing of them, well, therefore, they go down in price, despite the fact that there's less kids. Yes. So you would expect, in point of fact, that because of the slowing birth rate, that childcare and nursery school and toys should be up with childcare and nursery school because you have less of it's the manufacturing and sale of toys is less scalable, right? There's less kids, so you have to charge more, right? But toys defies that logic. So it shows that the market, in its genius, in its collective and divinely ordered genius, if left to its own free operation, will cause these good outcomes. All right. Should we go to computer software?
We've got computer software down 73%, cell phone services down 44%, clothing up, but only 1.5%.
So the inflation factor still makes it cheaper.
Household furnishings and operations up 21.4%, and then new cars 25.8%.
Yeah. What a fantastic graph. It essentially is a visual, economic, and mathematical representation of everything that's wrong.
It's you could take the entire macroeconomics class and
Yes.
it's one graph.
That's it. That's it. Not that there should be a macro versus a micro, but I get your point.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to talk about a town that hasn't looked too closely at that chart?
I would, but the last thing I'd like to show is if you could bring up that little quote that
Ah, yes.
tickled our fancy, that in a very beautiful way, there's Bethany, summarizes maybe everything we're about. Yeah. Thanks to the guy who's running the Gustav de Molinari, God bless him, Twitter handle. This quote comes from him. You become a libertarian when you realize that it's wrong to hurt people and take their stuff. And you become an anarchist when you realize that there are no exceptions. And there's 6 months in between or thereabouts. Right? If that. The quicker ones do it in 2 or 3 months. Yeah, there's just no exceptions to that. And the new book is really all could be summarized in that. My new book is just that. It's a lot longer though.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about a town that hasn't seen that quote either?
Right. There are a lot of exceptions. Albeit it's not very exceptional. Okay, here it comes.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
We should go to your gay suburb now.
People segment. Meanwhile in Oak Park, brought to you by Tridentine Brewing.
As it is.
Woman mugged on Oak Park Avenue.
Hmm.
Oak Park police
Such
are
a welcoming place, though.
Oak Park police are investigating. Hate has no home here. Oak Park police are investigating after a woman was mugged while walking on Oak Park Ave over the weekend.
Hate has no home in Oak Park, but violent crime does.
The woman was reportedly attacked by a man wearing a hood and black clothing while she walked in the 1000th block of South Oak Park Ave shortly after 7 p.m. Friday. The man tackled her from behind and kicked her in the leg before demanding the woman's purse. The man fled the area on foot after taking the woman's purse. The woman's cell phone had been inside the purse but was recovered on Harvard Street at the mouth of the Ridgeland Coiler Alley.
Who
According to
talks
police.
like that? It's not a tributary. It's just an alley.
This
mouth
is
of the alley.
most this is the most insulting. The stolen purse is valued at $50, according to police.
That's all the guy got away with, huh? I hope it was worth it.
Yeah, that was a dud. They picked
Yeah.
the wrong purse.
Right. You had the fake Gucci bag.
Was there anything inside?
Right. Oh, motherfucker, just fuzz. It's fuzz and a piece of gum.
OPRF goes on hold after unfounded bomb threat.
They catch the guy choosing the piece of gum. Wasn't me.
2 other suburban high schools received the same threat. Evanston. Oak Park and River Forest High School was placed on what is called a hold Monday, January 26th, for approximately 100 minutes because of what turned out to be an unfounded bomb threat and what seems to have been a swatting incident in which false threats or fake distress calls are made to elicit a response. Quote, we received an anonymous phone call of a bomb threat and immediately contacted law enforcement, said an email sent out to parents by the school at 9:40 a.m. on Monday. While the threat does not appear to be credible, out of an abundance of caution, local and county authorities are on site to conduct an inspection. We are limiting movement while this occurs.
Yes, because nothing makes you safer than when there's a bomb in the building and you have to just limit your movement.
Yeah, why don't they just go home?
Right.
During
So
a hold
it's not like they're going to receive anything better while they're at school. They're just in danger.
During a hold, teachers close and lock their doors and continue with class, and we stop.
Because bombs stop at classroom doors.
Yeah, what? Were they just trying to get a lesson off and they had to fake a bomb threat?
Yeah.
This is the most peaceful OPRF's ever been.
Bomb or not bomb, I got to get that pension.
And we stop movement in and out of the building until the release of the hold is announced. We will share additional information as we are able, said the statement to parents. The hold was lifted around 11 a.m. after a search of the school by a bomb squad from the Cook County Sheriff's Department found nothing.
Nice, safe learning environment, huh?
Oak Park police officers initially responded to the school and called in the bomb squad to conduct the search.
Said it a million times, Charlie, right? In what other facet of life are people from the general population all gathered by force into one building?
Prison.
Yeah.
According to an email sent out by the school, two other suburban Chicago schools also received bomb threats today that were unfounded.
It was, again, Evanston and which other one?
Quote, during our investigation, we learned that other districts in the area had received the same message, and all indications are that this was a swatting event, said Karen Sullivan. A spokesman for the Village of Oak Park confirmed that it appears to have been a swatting event and gave a few more details on the investigation.
They just like writing swatting right at this point. How many times did they get to say it?
Just before 11 a.m., Cook County ended the search of the building at the request of the school when it was learned that additional schools in the Chicagoland area received the same voicemail, which was tracked to a VPN overseas, said Dan Yabchik, a spokesman for the Village of Oak Park. Normal operations resumed at the school at that time, and officers cleared the scene. The threat and message are being investigated. No arrests have been made at this time, said Yabchik.
Well, these people understand how VPNs work, right? The guy just put in that he was
Yeah,
from Macedonia.
I don't think they
don't get that. Yeah. Okay. Dumb people.
Village must fix the leaf mess. I don't
Oh,
know
here
how
we
many,
want the
how many
leaves.
leaves you've been raking recently.
Yeah, right.
I'm writing in response to Ken Trainer's thoughts about leaf dreck. Thank you very much. Viewpoints, January 14th. Our local government caused this problem and it is theirs to fix. A service we had for years, which was covered in the village budget, was discontinued, and the tremendous amount of time and expense transferred to property owners while eliminating it from the budget. This was justified based on a villager parking his hot car on leaves and starting a fire, as well as concerns over child safety, although no events were cited to support this. When this service was provided, homeowners and lawn services deposited leaves along the curb, and village services removed the debris. It was efficient and we were much cleaner. Bagging leaves by the homeowner is more time consuming, less efficient, has less participation, and has resulted in less complete cleanup. Lawn services will carry the leaves away, but at a significant upcharge to the homeowner. Some homeowners have chosen to do nothing with the leaves rather than spend the time or money. Much of it migrates to the street. In spite of the village's suggestions, homeowners will not be cleaning our streets, and the village has not done so either. Another contributing factor is global warming. Bag pickup ended in early December when the trees were still full. This was complicated by a large early snow. The old service wouldn't have addressed this, but we would have been in better shape. Going forward, fall cleanup may need to extend into late December or early January. Many lawn services
Despite the early snow.
don't work past late November, but a few were working in December and January once the snow cleared. For those of us who use lawn services, their time and expense has been impacted and passed on to us. They will not bag leaves, but will load them into their truck and take them away as part of a single fall cleanup. Last year, it cost us an additional $100 above our previous fee, and this year they wanted $150 more, close to doubling our expense to provide this service. Their services for the year were also impacted by outlawing gas leaf blowers in the name of environmental protection. While I don't dispute the intent, it is low-hanging fruit and contributes minimally compared to the gas riding mowers or our cars. This required new equipment purchases. The battery-powered blowers aren't as strong and therefore less effective and add to their time. All was passed on to the consumer.
What does he think? What do you think? Does he think is going to happen when he has the village pick up the leaves? Is that not going to be passed on to the taxpayer?
I
It's just
believe
selective things that are going to be passed on, right?
I believe the village plan is a failure, is the cause of our beautiful village being an embarrassing mess and eroding the pride we have had in our appearance. Our drains are clogged and snow removal has been impacted by the buildup along the curbs. What will happen in the spring? I strongly urge the village to return to what works and increase service time to address seasonal change. Do it now while contracts for 2026 can be put in place.
Fascinating.
That's the segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay? Not as fun as last week.
No, no disputes there. They're all idiots. We're totally in agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
All
Well,
right.
good episode. Please start to speak to other people about the poison that's going on in the air. Move, do something, you know.
It's great small talk
Yeah, it is great small talk.
with
Yeah,
the
it's
right
kind of
people.
it's the new did you get vaccinated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's very easily identifiable whether you're in the remnant or not. You're in the remnant or the remaining, you know? So, but with that,
200 next week.
200. Man, I'm not into numerological significance so much, but man, 200, you've come a long way, baby.
Yeah.
Remember for 100 how we had the
Yeah.
episode, the tribute episode? That was pretty sweet. So, anyway, it's been a fun ride. Let's keep it up for 300, 400, 500, okay?
Sounds good.
God willing.
All right,
Cheers,
everyone.
Walt.
Thanks for
Pete.
listening.
Bye, guys.
Take care.